So I did have a book review. It's a book that I read a long time ago. Because I didn't have time to read anything because of all the company and all the commotion. So I'm coming here with an old book, and this is not. This is the first non-self-help book or non-chronic illness related book that I'm reviewing. But like I mentioned, all the books that I review, I'm going to relate to chronic illness in one way or another because that's what I scope about. Thank you for the hearts, by the way. So this book is called Give Us This Day by Sydney Stewart. And for those of you that are guys out there, this is a book about World War II. I'm not a big fanatic of war stuff or books or movies. I mean, I feel, especially movies, I feel like it's been overdone. There's a lot of good ones out there, but I just feel like it's been overdone. But this book is really, really, really good. If you're a history buff, if you like war stuff, this is right up your alley. And it's very well written. It's really, really good. The reason I got this book was because I was taking a class, a history class, way back when. Is it like Unbroken? Unbroken. I don't know Unbroken. Although it sounds familiar. I feel like I should know Unbroken. But this story, I got this book because I was taking a history class. They made a movie too. It might be based. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie out of this book. It's really, really good. So as I was saying, I got this book for a history class. I read it and I was like, this is an amazing book. I think it's one of the best accounts. It's actually an account of a POW. And I mean, it's an amazing account. It's unbelievable just the stuff that this guy went through. This book is not related to chronic illness. I read this book long before I was sick, probably over a decade ago. I've been sick for about a decade. But I read this long before that. And I loved the book then, but the book has even more significance now that I got sick, and I'll tell you guys why in a little bit. So this book was written by Sydney Stewart. He's a World War II vet. He studied at the University of Paris under the GI Bill. So he's not an author. He really isn't anything. He's not like a doctor or anything like that. He was just a World War II vet. He was a POW in the prison camps in the Philippines. And that's basically his background. Hi, Shadow Sleeper. So if you like war books, this is definitely up your alley. It's the theme or type of book. Hi, how are you? This is classified under history and World War II, but I would say it's more of a memoir. This is an account of his time in the prison camps. Still no Matica. Nope, I don't know. I don't know what happened to that guy. He's just... Every now and then he pops in. He'll go on a little streak of popping in, and then he just disappears. So I don't know. I don't know where he's at. Who knows what he's up to. I would say the target audience for this is probably history buffs. So if you're a big history buff, get this book. If you're all about World War II or American history, get this book. I mean, it's a small piece of history, but it's so condensed and it's so well written and so good that I mean, you'll love it. And I think it's also probably more geared towards guys, because I know guys are all into that war stuff, but this book can really be for anyone. It's a really, really good book. And it's, like I said, it's very well written, very descriptive. It's excellent. So, the focus of this book is, it details Sydney Stewart's time in a World War II prison camp in the Philippines. So he was captured, him and his whole infantry, they were captured. They were taken to this prison camp in the Philippines. And I don't want to say too much because you have to read the book. Hi, Raj Hat. Welcome. You have to read the book. It's, like I said, he details everything. So I'm just going to give you some of the basics. This is going to be a pretty short book review. Hi, how are you? It's going to be a pretty short book review because... this is not a self-help book, and also if I give you too much information, you know, it'll give away the book. We all know how World War II ended, but why did you end your fundraiser on you, Carrie? It was only for the month of May. I can open it back up again, but usually sometimes they say that it's better to have a time frame for the fundraiser. So I did it for Lyme Awareness Month. But I can open it back up at any time if I want to. But I leave the link up because a lot of people have questions about my illness. And I think the description on there is probably better than me constantly being on here, and having to describe my illness over and over again. It's okay. It's okay. So I'm just going to give you a few of the basics of this book because it's not, I don't want to give away too much. Hi, Horacio. Welcome. Like I said, it's a description of his time in the POW camp. So it starts in 1941 and it ends in 1945. So this is four years that he's in this prison camp. And it's a very detailed description of what it was like to be a POW in the Philippines, in the prison camps in the Philippines. So when I say very detailed, I mean very detailed. It focuses mostly on his time in the prison camp. The book starts shortly before the capture, so there is a little bit of warfare at the beginning and what life was like at war overseas, but basically the entire book from basically beginning to end is just in the prison camp. So if you're looking for a lot of action, I think there is action in this book. If I remember correctly, there is some action in this book, but most of it is just being in the prison camp. But there is a little bit of shooting and stuff like that in there. And it talks about everything that happens in the prison camp, the work that they made them do in the prison camp, the conditions of the prison camp, the relationships that the men build among each other, with each other in the prison camp. He tells you everything. It's just basically, it feels like you're actually there in the prison camp with them. Just their day-to-day life, how bad things get. Hi, Austin, Texas. Welcome. And they just, they tell you the work that they do. Also, they describe all the different personalities of the, I want to say the wardens. I don't know the correct term. The people that were in charge of the prison camp. So basically, they're captors. Some of them were a little bit more forgiving. Some of them were less forgiving. Some of them were pretty harsh. Some of them hated Americans, so you can just imagine. And they're not always in the same prison camp. I believe they go from one camp and then they're transferred to another one and then they're transferred to another one. So they're dealing with different prison camp officers, I guess, in each different camp. So the scenario does change throughout the book. So you're not just dealing with the same thing over and over again. This book is not monotonous in that way. Prison camps, they have jobs, when they're in the prison camps, but the people in charge of the camps are different. And that changes basically the dynamic of the soldiers every time they go to a different camp, because the person that's in charge of them is different in each camp. Some of them are nicer, some of them are worse. And so that kind of changes the direction of the story, and it changes the conditions that the men live in. So he talks about the guys that he was captured with. Hi, Alex. How are you? He talks about the guys that he was captured with. His friends. Some of them he knew. Some of them he just, met there because these guys are coming from different infantries and they're just being thrown into these prison camps together. So some are old friendships, some are new friendships, and then of course people come and go, and it's kind of heart-wrenching because they lose a lot of friends. I'm good. You just woke up? Oh my goodness, it's the middle of the day. So it talks about all the people that come in. The characters also shift throughout the story because, some of them live, some of them die. And that's kind of hard, because you start forming relationships with these characters and you want them to make it to the end. And, it's a prison camp. Some people are not going to make it to the end. One of the things that I really liked about this book, and it was kind of the part that fills you with hope, is just what these men did in order to survive. Because, you know, you can't just be in a prison camp. I mean, they did do work, and sometimes their work days were grueling. They did a lot of walking because they were walking from one place to another. So, you know, there was a lot of that. Thank you for the hearts, by the way. There was a lot of that, but they also had to find joy in some way. And that was one of the things that really moved me about this book, is that these guys were living in these horrible conditions, being tortured, suffering, and they still were able to somehow find joy in certain things. So there are very, very moving parts of the book. One of the most moving parts, or I'm going to tell you two examples of this. They were there for 4 years, or at least Sydney Stewart was there for 4 years. So that's 4 years full of holidays, 4 years full of birthdays, you know, that they went through, and that they couldn't celebrate with their families, because a lot of these guys had families. They had girlfriends, wives, children that they didn't get to see for 4 years. And, you know, and the holidays, of course, are the hardest time for these men, because they're away from their families, and they don't get to celebrate with their kids and their wives or whatever. So there was one occasion for Christmas where, you know, the men are, of course, very demoralized, and they're very sad because it's Christmas time. And of course, they're also in the Philippines, which is tropical, and you have really no sense of, you have no sense of time because you're a prisoner, but you also have no sense of time because the seasons are, I think, pretty the same in the Philippines. From my understanding of it, it's just very tropical. So it's Christmas time, and there's no Christmas. And a group of men, a group of the soldiers, had somehow managed to secretly come together, and they begged and begged one of the prison wardens, or whatever they're called, and they begged him, and they said, you know, we want to do this thing for Christmas. We really want to surprise the men with this, with something for Christmas. Guys, is my connection breaking up? Let me know if my connection's breaking up. My internet has been really spotty these last few days. So this group of men got together. They begged the prison warden, and they told him, we want to do some carols for the other men this Christmas. And they said yes. So secretly, this group of men practiced, and for Christmas morning, the men wake up to this beautiful chorus of Christmas carols. And it's one of the most touching scenes in the book. And it just shows the resilience, you know, that these men have, and just how much they cared for each other as well, and how much they wanted to make each other happy and give each other something. So guys, let me know how my connection is. I'm not seeing any comments. I don't know really what's going on. Another scene in the book was when they find a violin. It's good. Okay, good. Because my phone is it's breaking up a little bit. But if you guys can see me, I'm going to keep going. So one of the men knows how to play the violin, and they find a broken violin, I guess amid the garbage or whatever. And they say it only has 3 strings on it. It's only got 3 strings. And the guy is like, you know, a little glitchy. Yeah, I think something's going on. It's got to be the internet. It's just a mess right now. And so he says, you know, I found this violin, and the guy inspects it. They give it to the guy that knows how to play violin, and he looks at it and he goes, the rest of the strings are inside. They're inside. I can fix this violin. I can make it work. And so he fixes the violin, and the men are just overjoyed, because this is just, you know, this is one of the small joys that they get here in the prison camp. So he fixes the violin, and so they have of some violin music to keep them company during their days at the prison camp. So that was also another really moving part of the book, is just how they take pleasure in these very small, simple things. Like I said, this book is very easy to read. It's in plain English, nothing fancy, nothing too poetic. It's just a very simply written book, and if you love war stories, this one is excellent. The cons of this book, the only drawback for those of you that don't have a strong stomach, or for those of you that aren't really into depressing stuff, it's called Give Us This Day by Sydney Stewart. This book is really graphic. So they talk about body parts that get blown off. They talk about rotting limbs. They talk about all of that stuff. It's not a pretty thing to read. So if you're not a fan of that kind of stuff, I probably wouldn't read it. But I mean, it's just such a good story. I would read it anyways. It is a little depressing in some parts. So if you're kind of prone to getting really depressed, I probably wouldn't read it either. But you know, I'm not living under the happiest conditions, and I love this book. I mean, I think it's great, and it sort of is a hopeful story. And that brings me to my next point. Why is this good for chronically ill people? For me, I reread this book after I got really sick because it was just on my shelf and I needed something to read. And it really puts things into perspective. When you see how badly some people are suffering, it makes your suffering not seem as bad. So it basically, you know, when I started reading about this again and I started reliving this story, it made my suffering pale in comparison. So it really put things into perspective for me. You know, it also highlights the fact that there is suffering around the world. There's suffering throughout every era of human history. And that some of the suffering is just insane. I mean, when you read this book and you see the stuff that these guys go through, it is just insane. Hi, John. Welcome. It also makes me feel for people that are worse off than I am. I don't want to give away the ending of this book, but by the ending of this book, you see what condition Stewart is in and what he survived through, and that really puts things into perspective, and your heart goes out to him because it's just, you know, the things that he went through. I'm surprised that he even survived it. All right, see you later. Thank you for the hearts. So, you know, even though it is kind of depressing, it is an amazing story. It's full of hope, and it also, wow, now my phone's back to normal. It was all those hearts. They were slowing me down. That's crazy. That is so nuts. Bye. See you later. Wow. My screen is better now. So also the other thing that was really fascinating about this book is the amount of punishment that the human body can withstand. Thank you for the hearts. These guys went through some insane torture and just abuse, and some of them survived. So it really points out that the human body can take a beating and still survive. And for those of us that suffer with a chronic illness, I think it's important to remember that, because there are days when we think, you know, we're just going to die. I can't deal with this anymore. I can't go through this one more day. But the human body can really, really take a serious beating and still survive and still keep you going for many, many years after that. You know, it's insane. It's insane. The things that people can go through, and this is one of those stories. This is definitely one of those stories where the guy lived to tell story. You don't read it, but it's really good. It draws you in. It takes you to a completely different world. You're fully immersed in this book. Yeah, for some reason my connection is really spotty. I don't know what's going on. But I'm just gonna finish. I'm almost done. It's also an amazing piece of history that isn't really told very much because there's not a lot of survivors from these prison camps. And so this part of history is sort of missing. And this is one of the most detailed read. It's amazing. It's a really, really good book. And like I said, it's in plain English. You're not dealing with crazy out there language. It's not super poetic. It's just very well written. There's dialogue. There's, events that happen in the book. I mean, it's really easy to get into. And it's not a long book either. I think it's just under 300 pages. It's like 250 pages or something. It's a test. Get through today, we can get through tomorrow, we can get through next week. If these guys did it, believe me, you can do it too. And it's very motivating for anybody that is going through something really intense, whether it's